How did this drawing turn this guy into one of the most popular mangaka of our generation? And a freaking millionaire? Well, let's talk about it.
It's a real-life underdog tale that reminds each one of us that even if you're not good at anything and don't have much to offer, the internet can just say, who the hell cares, and make you a star anyway. But in all seriousness, the story of One, the mangaka behind major hits like One Punch Man and Mob Psycho 100, is one filled with humor, intrigue, and real-life struggles. This man's life is a legit movie.
So sit back, grab a little drink, and let me explain to you how this poorly drawn bald guy turned One into a manga legend.
Our story begins in beautiful Niigata, Japan, but then jumps to the city of Konosu for a bit and then back to Niigata. Bouncing around a bit, but it's alright, it'll make sense in a second. See, One was born in Niigata, but he grew up in Konosu. And the reason these two areas in particular are important to note when starting this story is because they play a major role in One's most successful work of all, in two completely different ways. One about a certain bald man with cartoonish levels of strength, but we'll get to him later. As a kid, although he lived in Konosu, he'd frequently visit his grandparents in Niigata. One day while doing just that, One's parents came to him with a surprise.
So his dad walks up to him, gets on one knee and says, "One, my son, I've got something for you."
Alright, so I know One's parents probably didn't call him One, they probably called him by his real name, but we don't know his real name, it's just One. Or Tomohiro, which he used in the past before too, so... yeah. But anyway, the gift in question turned out to be a collection of manga, and not just any manga. It was the comedy series Crayon Shin-chan, a series that would help shape the iconic humor we would come to love in One's biggest works. Shin-chan follows the adventures of a 5-year-old named Shinosuke Nohara, or Shin, along with his parents, baby sister, dog, neighbors, and best friends. Most of the storylines revolve around Shin and the various antics he gets into at school or around the neighborhood, while mixing in some surprisingly crude and in-your-face humor. It's honestly pretty jarring when you compare it to the otherwise kid-friendly appearance of the series. To explain what I mean, I have this memory from when I was a kid where I was watching Shin-chan on Adult Swim one night. It was the first night I had ever watched it, and it piqued my interest because it looked like such a weird show to have on Adult Swim. I don't know, it just seemed like some Disney Channel shit, you know? Well, not even 5 minutes in, I understood exactly why it was on a nighttime adult network. Put it this way, Shin-chan's signature dance is where he pulls out his butt cheeks and prances around. He also has this gag where he turns a certain part of his body into an elephant. I think you could probably take a good guess at which one. And I distinctly remember one part where he mentioned one of his favorite games to play with his friends was called Saki Tag. Oh, and his favorite superhero is called Action Bastard. Need I say more? Needless to say, One had some pretty cool parents for giving their young son this series to read. I mean, maybe they didn't even know, they just looked at the cover and were like, yeah, this should be good for a kid. Well, much like myself after I watched the first episode, One was hooked and it even inspired him to pursue a career as a mangaka. From then on, he'd practice his drawing all throughout middle school and high school, all the while getting involved in tennis, which inspired one of his first works that was never serialized, Tennis Player Ryu, which was apparently based on a real-life tennis player named Ryu. That's really all that's known about it. With his other early work, Sunman, I at least have a nice little quote for you guys. When I was in my teens, I drew Sunman on a blank sheet of copy paper and uploaded it to a small website. I made the last boss too strong and couldn't defeat it, so I took down the site. Sure, Sunman didn't work out the way he wanted it to, but it really didn't matter. In One's mind, he was just practicing being a better artist and writer, all in his pursuit to be a mangaka professionally. A dream he actually hid from his entire family, and he'd eventually give up on that dream because of them for a while. See, One's family didn't force him to give up on his dream of becoming a mangaka or anything. They simply told him that they were worried he was picking an unrealistic career and he should do something more practical. So hey, before you start going all Xbox 360 party chat in the comments talking all sorts of poop about his parents, you gotta realize that they were probably right. At the end of the day, they just wanted a good future for their son, and One listened to them, but also kinda didn't. One still held on to his dream of becoming a mangaka, that never went away, so he continued to practice in his spare time, but he kept it a complete secret from his family from then on. So the grind continued. With all this practice, One had developed some comical savviness when it came to his writing, but his artwork was still nowhere near the level of some of the famous manga in the early 2000s, when he was still working on his craft. I mean, compare one of the drawings he'd make years later next to the likes of Bleach, One Piece, and Naruto. There's not really any comparison. I can only imagine the pressure that one must have felt in his late teens and early 20s to go all in for this dream, feeling like his best was nowhere near good enough, and he had no one to count on for support but himself.
And this is where I feel like one doesn't get enough credit.
Sure, what comes next seems like a classic story of an underdog defying all odds, but the journey there is one that hardly seems very glamorous looking back on it. It was an everyday struggle, but nonetheless, one kept going, and soon enough, the tremendous power of late 2000s internet would catapult him into a life he never thought possible, yet one with struggles still to come. So one was left in a weird spot in his early 20s. He made big strides in writing, but his art was still nowhere near good enough for the likes of Shonen Jump or even lesser known manga magazines.
So he does what any guy in his 20s with no other options would do. He turned to the internet.
One decided to create his own website to self-publish his works. I mean, who would say no to his art if he was the one that owned the site? Foolproof plan, right? Well, not exactly, my friend. One faced a major problem going this route. He was getting a grand total of 0.0 viewers on his site each and every day. The flaw in his plan that he soon realized was that because of his unknown status and unique drawing style, no one cared to visit his site or even had any idea it existed. Remember, at this point, one is a nobody with not a single fan for him to call on to read his stuff. With that realization in mind, one turned to posting his manga on popular self-publishing manga sites. He didn't really have a plan of which one he would pick either, he just wanted his work out there. And on top of that, he practiced his drawing religiously.
He even once said he filled 50 entire notebooks with pages of drawings.
50? That's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Eventually, all of his efforts started to finally pay off. One of the sites he was posting on, called Nietzsche, would eventually gain a reputation for helping create successful mangakas, such as one himself and the creator of Tokyo Ghoul, Sui Ishida, among others. Well, considering the obvious spoiler in my last sentence, this would be the site where one would finally make a name for himself with his greatest work. This guy, we'll call him Saitama for now. One got the name of the province he grew up in and slapped it on the main character of his next big project, One Punch Man. After spending some time getting used to the online manga scene, one decided to upload a little project he had been working on, one where a plain-faced bald guy walks around being a hero for fun. In the very first chapter of the original version of One Punch Man, we find ourselves entering what appears to be the Doodle Bob universe. With a massive explosion that takes out multiple things that we're gonna call buildings, we then see that this Piccolo-looking monster is the cause of it, and he's apparently been sent to eliminate all humans and cleanse Mother Earth once and for all. Well, if that wasn't super duper evil enough for you, he then sees a little girl crying and approaches her, just as a mysterious bald guy is seen watching a news broadcast of the whole scene. So he decides to check it out while striking this killer pose. Well, Doodle Bob Piccolo approaches the crying girl and tries squeezing the applesauce out of her when she suddenly disappears from his grip. Enter the man himself, Saitama. The monster, now known as Vaccine Man, asks him who he is. Saitama then responds with a line that hits way harder with the context of the rest of this video. He stares at him with the face only a mother could love, and he says, "Just an average guy who serves as a hero for fun." And the rest is history. Well, to be specific, Vaccine Man gets pissed at his weak-ass motivation, flexes his own motivations, goes into his final form, and gets blasted away with a single punch mid-monologue. Saitama then falls onto his knees in agony, as another monster is yeeted with a single punch yet again. And that's the pilot. Well, at the time, one did not think much of this one-shot. He even mentioned himself that he didn't think he would be continuing One Punch Man as a series, but titled the chapter Chapter 1 just because. There was legit no thought behind it. Well, the reception to this bald, misshapen man was freaking insane. Alright, maybe not that crazy at first, but the webcomic actually did start getting some hits. People enjoyed the witty writing and unique art style one had developed, after all those long hours practicing in his room and hiding all those sketchbooks from his parents. It wasn't just the unique style though. People were seriously enamored with the different spin on the typical manga protagonist that Saitama represented. He was skinny, kinda goofy looking, and had this nonchalant personality that didn't match his incredible strength whatsoever, and this was all by design. In an interview, one once discussed taking all the superhero tropes that were taking a firm grip on Hollywood in the late 2000s with the likes of Iron Man and later the Avengers, and going in the complete opposite direction with Saitama whenever possible. That's why instead of having the suave hairdo of Superman or the iconic Super Saiyan hair of Goku, my boy's hair went to get milk and cigarettes and never came back. Regardless of how it all looked though, One Punch Man was starting to build up some steam, garnering thousands of readers every new chapter. 2009 marked the biggest year in one's life, as his dream was finally starting to become a reality, all thanks to a guy acting as a hero for fun. However, as one is about to find out, success is hardly ever linear, and he'd now have to completely give up on his dream for the sake of his family. Beginning in 2009, One had consistently posted new chapters of the series to Nietzsche, having published 30 chapters by 2010. By this time, he had garnered thousands of monthly readers, and even had his work hyped up by other mangaka online.
It seemed that One was on his way to the life that he had always dreamed of, just drawing and having people enjoy his manga for a living.
One explains that in 2010, he had began to deal with some heavy family issues. Not much more about this is known, but what we do know is what these family issues led One to do. Out of nowhere, One took a regular salaryman job and announced that he was taking an indefinite hiatus from drawing manga. Now this is the very last thing One wanted to do. His dream was finally being realized. It was right freaking there, and now he had to give it all up for a regular suit and tie job that I know he must have absolutely hated. And here's proof. In the second chapter of his booming webcomic, we got to see the origin story of Saitama. We meet him just as he's coming back from another unsuccessful job interview, when he runs into the monster crab Lante, who apparently had eaten so much crab that he turned into one. This is where he tells the monster that he doesn't really care if he lives or dies. He was fed up with working as a salaryman and even failing at that. It wasn't until he was faced with an opportunity to save a butt-chinned kid from the aforementioned crab monster that he realized what really gave his life purpose: being a hero. In a sense, this was One expressing his own feelings and beliefs about life through Saitama. A regular desk job was the very last thing One wanted, and like Saitama's dream of becoming the strongest hero, One wanted to be a mangaka more than anything else. But alas, One traded in his pen for, I guess, a different kind of pen? I don't know, like ballpoint or something? And he left One Punch Man behind, leaving thousands of fans itching for even the slightest news of One's return, if that was even going to happen. And among those fans was an artist, not just any artist either. It was a mangaka that would go on to change One's life and the lives of many manga enjoyers all over the world.
Fine. I'll do it myself.
Never draw a line without purpose. That was a pretty baseline for Murata, not gonna lie. It's advice he definitely lives by after all. Yusuke Murata was born in 1978 in Miyagi Prefecture, Japan. Unlike One, Murata sensei had some serious drawing skills, and it was obvious pretty early on too. At the age of only 12, he entered a contest to design Mega Man villains, and won the whole thing not once but twice. The final designs of 2 villains were adapted from his sketches into Mega Man games. The game credits list his name as responsible for Dustman for Mega Man 4 and Crystal Man for Mega Man 5. At the young age of 17, Murata debuted as a professional manga artist in 1995 by publishing a one-shot titled Partner in a special edition of Shueisha's Weekly Shonen Jump. For this work, he won the Hop Step Award, which was a monthly recruitment project by Weekly Shonen Jump.
I mean, I could just sit here and glaze his whole Wikipedia page, but I think you guys get the point.
Murata was a wonderkind in the manga industry, creating gold wherever he decided to spill his ink.
But like with One, life seems to have a pretty funny way of telling you they love you. You'd almost think that life is trying to gaslight you sometimes, you know what I mean?
He eventually worked on his biggest project to that point, Ice Shield 21, with writer Riichiro Inagaki. It's a shonen series about football. It's actually pretty good, check it out. The series spanned 333 chapters, with the final chapter being published on June 15th, 2009. So once it wrapped up and Murata wasn't so busy drawing manga every week for people to read, he'd finally get time to rest and read some manga himself. Well, that didn't really happen. He still enjoyed manga like he wanted, but he kept working on manga as well. In between working on other projects, Murata really enjoyed reading a little webcomic called One Punch Man. He even reached out to One about adapting One Punch Man to a manga, but he got the swipe left from One after finding out about his indefinite hiatus. So he just kept working on other stuff. Well, although we don't know for sure, Murata's refusal to slow down must have caught up with him, like it does for a lot of mangaka unfortunately. With how committed mangaka are to their craft and the strict deadlines they have to meet from week to week, being in the industry seems like a more dangerous job than Alaskan crab fishing. This wasn't just a bad case of the flu either. From what Murata sensei describes, he was straight up fighting for his life. When you're staring into the abyss like that, I mean truly considering the fact that you might not make it out of this, the things you truly want in life tend to creep to the front of your mind. I can't tell you what really goes on through someone's head during times like this. I haven't almost died before, so I'll just let the man tell you himself what he went through, and the decision it would lead him to take. Around that time, I was actually really sick. I broke out in hives and my inner organs were infected, and I couldn't breathe well with my windpipe swelling. I was sitting in the hospital when I thought, I guess people die just like that. If I'm going to die, I want to go doing something I really love to do. I want to draw manga with Mr. One.
Okay, so this is heartwarming and inspiring and all, but just imagine almost dying from drawing too much manga just to be like, you know what? I want to draw some more manga once I get better. Like what?
But regardless, he reached out to One once again. And of course, the man was not going to say no this time. However, they didn't start with One Punch Man. One was still working a desk job full time after all. Plus Murata just almost died. They had to work on shorter projects together, ones they could chip away at casually. The first one was called Heroes of Fury. I'm not gonna lie, before making this video, I had personally never read it, but its description on this website definitely piqued my interest as I was scripting this video, so then I had to read it. And honestly, I'm really glad that I did, because it was pretty damn hilarious. It starts off with the king being informed that his daughter had been kidnapped by the Demon King. Panicking to get the princess to safety, he calls on one of his soldiers to put out posters all over the country, with what he calls the most insane reward imaginable, in hopes of drawing in the fabled legendary hero. Well, it turns out the reward was his daughter's hand in marriage, but it didn't get the desired result, considering, she's butt fugly. So one of the soldiers takes it upon himself to hit the poster with a little Photoshop and boom, all of a sudden every guy far and wide had the fire of heroism in their eyes. As each person goes over their individual ridiculous reasons as to why they're the chosen legendary hero, I couldn't help but notice the witty and ensemble style of storytelling One would continue to develop, in specific with Saitama and friends. Well, they all rush to take on the Demon King, who goes right into his final form to take down the swarm of, quote, heroes. But surprisingly, despite his strong looking form and how weak the heroes seem to be, they beat the crap out of him and storm the castle for the princess. And of course, they thought they were getting what was advertised in the poster. They didn't know that this one was ordered on Temu, so she didn't look quite like the image. We then cut to the king being informed that there's an army of angry heroes rushing to storm the castle. The end. Even if you're not a fan of One Punch Man, I definitely recommend giving this one shot a read. It's quick, the art style is clean of course, and it's got the one humor we know and love. This one's about a fan club of high school dudes that secretly follow a girl in their class, who just so happens to have magical powers. They swear to secrecy and promise to guard her secret with their lives. In a funny twist, the girl in question actually hates the fact that she has to kill demons secretly, and wishes she had a fan club of her own, not knowing she's literally being stalked by one constantly. This is a bit of a longer story, so I'm not going to dive all the way into it here, but again, I highly recommend you read it yourself. Well, that brings us to the main event, the coup de grace, as they say, somewhere. The series that brought One worldwide acclaim, and not only fulfilled his dream of becoming a mangaka, it would make him one of the most popular mangaka of the last decade. And that series, of course, is
Hiatus Maji
So after teaming up a few times and having fans love it, Yusuke Murata's editor eventually helped them connect with the publisher of Weekly Young Jump, which was a mostly seinen magazine owned by Shueisha, meaning it was a magazine directed at a young adult male audience, perfect for One Punch Man. It officially published the manga in 2012 to immediate success. After all, One had garnered a passionate fanbase that was already glazing his doodles in the webcomic, and not only that, it showcased some of the best artwork in the entire industry. Murata's professional artwork and Young Jump's broader audience definitely boosted One Punch Man's success, but at its core it was still One's unique storytelling that gave it the heart it needed to truly become something special. It quickly garnered hundreds of thousands of readers every issue, and by its 5th volume, One Punch Man had over 2.2 million copies in circulation. This was also around the time the manga had an anime adaptation announced, having its first season said to be animated by a studio that was essentially the Mappa of 10 years ago. A studio that would go on to gather the greatest talent in the industry to form a dream team, one that would create one of the greatest anime seasons in years. If you haven't guessed it, it is Madhouse. The first season was directed by Shingo Natsume, who's also had his hand in iconic series like Space Dandy and Full Metal Alchemist. It was written by Tomohiro Suzuki, with the likes of Saint Seiya Legendary Sanctuary, Lupin 3, and most recently, Frieren Beyond Journey's End to his credits. And of course the character designs were done by Chikashi Kubota. The first episode aired on October 5th, 2015, and concluded on December 20th of that same year, with a total of 12 episodes covering the Saitama introduction arc up to the Alien Conquerors arc. The One Punch Man anime was one of the standout TV anime productions of that year, wowing both casual fans and industry insiders alike. The visuals were so impressive that Chikashi Kubota, the aforementioned character designer and chief animation director, had to clarify on Twitter that despite the top-notch animation quality, they were working with a pretty standard budget. Really, what we were seeing was the result of passionate artists giving it their all. It's no surprise that the series director Shingo Natsume would be the main creative force behind all this. One Punch Man is basically the culmination of his career, and it really shows. Everything he's learned along his career was masterfully put to use here. Another big part of the show's unique look is its digital animation, which is also thanks to Natsume. He'd been collaborating with a bunch of animators from the WebGen generation, who were young talents who got their start posting animations online before turning pro. Natsume's own style fit right in with these guys, including fellow directors Gosei Oda and Norifumi Kugai. And this was along with other WebGen animators that you might be familiar with, like Ryu Nakayama, Shun Enokido, and Kenichi Fujisawa. Their distinct styles are on full display in the show, especially in the big action scenes. And guess what Season 1 has plenty of? They are masters of lasers, explosions, and punches, exactly what the show needed. In contrast to these digital animators, there was Yoshimichi Kameda, who brought the strength of traditional animation. Fans of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which includes me, will recognize his style immediately. His work is memorable for its sharp timing, thicker line work, and exaggerated poses. In One Punch Man, his scenes are some of the most demanding and visually striking, like in probably one of my favorite fights of the entire season, like when we get to see the Saitama vs. Subterranean People dream sequence. That fight was just mwah, chef's kiss. Kameda's influence goes beyond just his key animations and illustrations though. As one of the action animation directors, his rough, thick lines have become a hallmark of the show's style. Even during other animator sequences, you can often see his creative touch peeping through, like for example in episode 3 with Genos' incineration flames.
But long story short, they brought the squad together to get this done, and oh boy did they.
But it's not just the animation staff who deserve credit. Fans of Yusuke Murata's version of One Punch Man, which the anime is based on, know that this manga is almost like an animation itself. Murata's step-by-step, highly detailed sequences are just like key animation sheets, reflecting his love of animation. This dedication translates perfectly into the anime. The show has a simple yet hilarious concept, but what truly made it timeless was the top-notch execution of this team. Whether it's Murata's amazing art in the manga, or the stellar animation in the TV series, the quality was second to none. Season 1's team nailed the comedy and action so well that it led to a huge boost in manga sales, with over 11 million copies in circulation by the 11th volume. The first season took the franchise's popularity to new heights, cementing itself as one of the biggest names in anime and manga, and not just in Japan, but also other countries all around the world. I mean, I'm in the United States and I love One Punch Man, so. What made the first season so perfect was how they could have incredible action sequences 1 second, and then the next you have Saitama waking up from a nightmare where he was playing rock, paper, scissors with someone with a booger on their finger. In an interview with One in 2017, he addressed the report that One Punch Man had actually outsold One Piece as the top-selling manga in the US at that time. While he was happy with the franchise's international popularity, humble as ever, he gave most of the credit to Yusuke Murata for his noteworthy contribution to the series. That's the thing with One. It's undeniable how hard he had to work to get to where he was at that point. Every moment of free time he had, he would use it to work on his drawing, even hiding it from his parents who disapproved of his dream. Once he finally got the opportunity to be able to upload his manga for the world to see, he'd get the long-awaited recognition he deserved, even after forcefully leaving his dream behind for the sake of his family, just to come back and start a manga that would gain worldwide acclaim with one of the best artists in said world. You just didn't see the guy change up at all. Sure, he could have hogged all the credit and huffed on his own farts like a lot of other famous people do, but not him.
In a sense, he embodied the main character of One Punch Man, Saitama, to a T.
He's just a normal guy who doesn't care much about credit or acclaim as long as he's doing what he loves. For Saitama, that's being a hero for fun, and for One, it's being a mangaka for fun. Now after season 1, fans would have to wait 3 whole years before the second installment of the anime, which would arrive in 2019, a new season that would introduce one of the most beloved characters in the series, even rivaling the main freaking character, Saitama. And that of course is the martial arts menace, Garo.
Well, unfortunately, the second season was nowhere near as good as the first, so it was kind of duty, to be honest, but what are you going to do?
In part because a new studio took on the second season, with Madhouse no longer being what it once was, and also in part because of the restricted schedules the animators had to deal with. Sure, it had its shining moments, but it never came close to the iconic animation season 1 brought. On a positive note though, the manga continued to boom. All the hype and success of the manga culminated in the climax of the series' biggest arc to date, one that literally ran half the length of the entire story at 70 plus chapters. Here we bared witness to one of the most incredible fights in all of manga, with Saitama vs Garo, an event that absolutely broke the internet and is actually the reason why I'm here talking to you right now. I started my main channel because I was literally so hyped about the fight and just had nobody to talk about it with. That's because at the peak of this arc, fans got news that they had been waiting for years. Season 3 was announced to finally be in production, and at the time of this recording, we're even getting fresh character designs every month, leading up to the release of the new season. Just as importantly in my opinion, One's gone back to what started it all, as he began releasing new chapters of the webcomic, with some surprisingly much improved art as well.
That just tells you the guy is still practicing his drawing even after all this success.